The gold-embossed invitations sat on our kitchen counter like a ticking bomb. I stared at the elegant calligraphy that spelled out Christmas Eve dinner at the Montgomery estate, while my hands trembled slightly around my coffee mug. "Emily, you haven't said anything in 5 minutes," my husband Daniel said softly, wrapping his arms around me from behind. "Talk to me." I leaned back into his warmth, drawing strength from his presence. "I'm terrified, Daniel. Your mother has made it crystal clear she thinks I'm not good enough for you. 6 months of marriage, and she's barely spoken 10 words to me." Daniel sighed, his breath warm against my ear. "I know my mother can be difficult, but this is important to me. It's our first Christmas as a married couple, and despite everything, she's still my mother. She's also getting older, and I want us to try to be a family." I turned to face him, seeing the hope and pain mixed in his dark eyes. This man had chosen me despite his mother's fierce opposition to our marriage. He'd stood by me when Victoria Montgomery had called me a gold-digging waitress at our engagement party. He deserved my courage now. "Okay," I whispered, touching his cheek. "I'll do this. For you. For us." The relief that flooded his face made my heart ache. "Thank you, Emily. I promise, whatever happens, we're in this together." But as I looked back at that invitation, I couldn't shake the feeling that this Christmas would change everything. The week leading up to Christmas Eve was a blur of anxiety and preparation. I bought 3 different dresses, returning 2 of them because they weren't elegant enough for Victoria Montgomery's standards. The final choice was a deep emerald green dress that Daniel said made my eyes sparkle, though I wondered if his mother would find fault with even that. "Remember," Daniel coached me as we drove through the snow toward his mother's estate, "don't take the bait. Mother likes to test people. She'll say things to get a reaction." "What kind of things?" I asked, my stomach knotting. "Questions about your family, your background, your plans for the future. Just be yourself, Emily." That's who I fell in love with. As we pulled through the massive iron gates, my breath caught. The Montgomery estate was like something from a movie, a sprawling mansion lit with thousands of white lights, with a towering Christmas tree visible through the front windows. This wasn't just wealth, it was old money, the kind that came with expectations and judgments. A butler opened our car door, and suddenly I was stepping into a world I'd only seen in magazines. The foyer alone was larger than my childhood home, with marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and a Christmas tree that must have been 20 feet tall. "Daniel, darling." A cold voice echoed from the grand staircase. Victoria Montgomery descended like a queen, her silver hair perfectly coiffed, wearing a designer gown that probably cost more than my yearly salary. At 72, she was still striking, with sharp blue eyes that assessed me like I was an item at an auction, and found wanting. "Mother," Daniel said warmly, kissing her cheek. "You remember Emily." "How could I forget?" Victoria said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "The woman who convinced my son to throw away his future." The dining room could have seated 30 people, but tonight it was just the 3 of us, sitting at one end of a table that seemed to stretch into infinity. The irony wasn't lost on me. All this space, all this wealth, and Victoria Montgomery was utterly alone except for the son she was slowly pushing away. "Emily," Victoria said as the first course was served, "Daniel tells me you're still working at that restaurant." The way she said restaurant made it sound like I was doing something shameful. I felt Daniel tense beside me, but I kept my voice steady. "Yes, Mrs. Montgomery. I'm the evening manager now, actually. I was promoted 3 months ago." "How industrious." Her smile was like ice. "Though I suppose when one marries into money, continuing to work is rather unnecessary, isn't it?" "Mother," Daniel began, but I touched his hand gently under the table. "I work because I love what I do," I said quietly. "And because I believe in earning my own way. Daniel and I are partners in every sense." Victoria's eyes narrowed slightly. "Partners? How modern." "In my day, a woman knew her place was supporting her husband's career, not pursuing her own ambitions." The contempt in her voice was palpable, But I refused to rise to the bait. Instead, I asked, "And your husband? Did he appreciate your support?" For the first time, I saw something flicker in Victoria's eyes, pain, quickly hidden. My husband built an empire. I gave him the freedom to do so. That must have been lonely, I said softly, and I meant it. The comment hung in the air between us, and for a moment, Victoria looked almost vulnerable. Then her mask slipped back into place, and she turned to Daniel, pointedly excluding me from the conversation. After dinner, Victoria led us to the drawing room, where presents were arranged beneath another massive tree. I'd spent days finding the perfect gift for her, finally settling on a first edition of her favorite book that Daniel had mentioned. It had cost more than I wanted to spend, but I'd hoped it might build a bridge between us. Victoria opened my gift with the enthusiasm of someone defusing a bomb. She looked at the book, then at me, her expression unreadable. "Where did you find this?" she asked quietly. "A rare book dealer in the city. Daniel mentioned you loved Wuthering Heights, and that your original copy was lost in a fire years ago. I hoped." "You hoped to buy my affection," Victoria interrupted, setting the book aside. How predictable. The cruelty of the words stung, but what hurt more was watching Daniel's face fall. He'd been so hopeful for this evening. "That's not fair, Mother," Daniel said, his voice tight with controlled anger. "Emily spent weeks looking for that book because she cared about making you happy." "Did she?" Victoria stood, walking to the window overlooking the snow-covered grounds. "Or did she do it because she knows that when I die, everything goes to you? Tell me, Emily, did Daniel mention that I'm the third richest woman in the state?" The accusation hit me like a slap. I stood, my hands shaking but my voice steady. "I knew nothing about your wealth when I met Daniel. I was his waitress at a diner off Interstate 40. He came in every Wednesday for 3 months before he finally asked me out. I fell in love with a man who made me laugh, who listened to my dreams, who saw me as more than just someone to serve him food." "Pretty words," Victoria said dismissively. "They're true words," I continued, stepping closer to her. "And you know what the saddest part is? I came here tonight hoping to get to know my husband's mother, to understand the woman who raised the man I love. But instead, I've met someone so trapped by her own fear and loneliness that she'd rather push away her only son than risk letting anyone in." The silence that followed was deafening. "How dare you?" Victoria whispered, her voice shaking with rage. "How dare you presume to know anything about me or my life?" "Then tell me," I said, surprising myself with my own passion. "Tell me why you hate me so much. Is it really because I was a waitress? Or is there something else?" Victoria's composure cracked, and for the first time, I saw the real woman beneath the Ice Queen exterior. Tears glittered in her eyes, though she refused to let them fall. "You want to know," she said bitterly. "Fine. 20 years ago, another young woman captured my husband's attention. She was beautiful, charming, and from a completely inappropriate background. She loved him, she claimed. She wasn't interested in his money, she insisted." I felt Daniel tense beside me, clearly hearing a story he'd never been told. "Mother," he said slowly, "what are you talking about?" Victoria laughed, a sound without humor. "Your father had an affair, Daniel. For 2 years, while I was home raising you, supporting his business, he was with her. And when I found out, she had the audacity to say she truly loved him, that money didn't matter. It was all lies. When I threatened to expose her, to cut off all financial support, she disappeared without a trace. Vanished. True love, indeed." The revelation hung in the air like smoke. I understood now. Victoria's cruelty wasn't really about me at all. I was simply a ghost of her past, a reminder of the betrayal that had broken her. "I'm sorry that happened to you," I said quietly. "Truly. But I'm not her." "They all say that," Victoria replied, turning away. "But people don't change. They just wear different faces." "You're wrong," Daniel said, his voice stronger than I'd ever heard it. "Emily is nothing like whoever that woman was. She's turned down every offer I've made to combine our bank accounts. She insists on paying half of everything. She got angry when I tried to buy her a car because she wanted to save for it herself. He moved to stand beside me, taking my hand. And I'll tell you something else, Mother. If you can't see how extraordinary she is, if you're going to let your past poison your future, then Emily and I will leave. We'll build our life without you. Because I won't watch you destroy the woman I love the way Father's betrayal destroyed you. The drive home was silent, heavy with unspoken words. Snow had begun to fall heavily, and Daniel's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. I'd never seen him so angry, so hurt. I'm sorry, I finally whispered. I shouldn't have confronted her like that. No, Daniel said firmly. You were right. Everything you said was right. I can't believe she never told me about my father's affair. All these years, I thought her coldness was just her personality. I never knew she was carrying that kind of pain. It doesn't excuse how she treats people, I said, but at least now we understand. Daniel pulled over suddenly, putting the car in park. He turned to me, his eyes glistening. Emily, I need you to know something. Whatever my mother says, whatever she does, it doesn't change anything between us. You're my family now. You're my choice, every day. I leaned across the console, kissing him softly. I know. And I'm not giving up on her, Daniel. Not yet. Why not? He asked, genuinely confused. After everything she said to you? Because she's your mother. And because I saw something tonight, beneath all that anger and bitterness. I saw a woman who's been alone for so long she's forgotten how to let anyone in. Maybe she just needs someone to be patient with her. Daniel shook his head in wonder. How did I get so lucky? I ask myself the same thing every day, I replied with a small smile. But as we drove home through the storm, I couldn't stop thinking about Victoria, alone in that massive house, surrounded by wealth but starved for genuine connection. And I made a decision that would change everything. The day after Christmas, I did something Daniel couldn't know about. I drove back to the Montgomery estate. The butler who answered looked surprised to see me. Mrs. Emily? Mr. Daniel isn't here. I know, I said. I came to see Mrs. Montgomery. Is she available? He hesitated, then nodded. Please, come in. I'll let her know. I waited in the foyer, my heart pounding. This could go terribly wrong. Victoria could have me thrown out, or worse, say things that would make any future relationship impossible. But I had to try. This is unexpected, Victoria's cold voice came from the stairs. She descended slowly, regal even in casual clothing. Has Daniel sent you to negotiate a peace treaty? Daniel doesn't know I'm here, I admitted. And I'm not here to negotiate. I'm here to talk if you're willing. Victoria studied me for a long moment. And why would I be willing to talk to you? Because I think you're tired, I said softly. Tired of being angry, tired of being alone, tired of pushing away the only family you have left. And because I think, underneath everything, you want to know your son is happy and loved. Something shifted in Victoria's expression. She waved a hand toward the drawing room. 5 minutes. That's all I'm giving you. We sat in the same room where presents had been exchanged the night before, but the atmosphere was completely different. In the cold light of day, Victoria looked older, more vulnerable. I didn't come here to tell you that you were wrong, I began, or to ask you to approve of me. I came because I want you to know something true. Victoria raised an eyebrow but remained silent. I grew up poor, I continued. Really poor. My mother worked 3 jobs to keep a roof over our heads after my father left. I learned to sew my own clothes, to make meals from almost nothing. When I was 16, I started working at diners to help pay bills. I put myself through community college while working full-time. Is there a point to this? Victoria asked, but her voice had lost some of its edge. The point is, I know what it's like to struggle. And I also know what it's like to be judged for your background. When I met Daniel, I fell in love with his kindness, his humor, his integrity. I didn't know he came from money until our third date, when he accidentally mentioned his mother's company. Victoria's expression remained guarded, but she was listening. I pressed on. When I found out about his family's wealth, I was terrified. I almost broke up with him because I was scared of exactly this, being seen as someone who only wanted his money. But Daniel convinced me that our love was real, that it was worth fighting for. Love fades, Victoria said quietly. Money, status, security, those are what last. Is that what you had with your husband? I asked gently. Security. Victoria's face tightened. My husband and I had an understanding. He built his empire, I maintained our social position. It worked for many years. But you loved him, I said. It wasn't a question. For the first time, Victoria's composure truly cracked. A single tear rolled down her cheek, which she quickly wiped away. I loved him very much. Which is why his betrayal destroyed me. I'm not her, I said again, leaning forward. Mrs. Montgomery, I will never cheat on your son. I will never betray his trust. And I will never, ever, use him for his money. I don't need his wealth. I need him. His laugh, his support, his love. That's what matters to me. Pretty words again, Victoria said, but there was less venom in it now. Then let me prove it, I replied. Let me show you over time that I'm exactly who I say I am. Not through grand gestures or expensive gifts, but through my actions. Through how I treat Daniel, how I build our life together. Victoria was silent for a long moment, staring out the window at the snow-covered grounds. When she finally spoke, her voice was softer than I'd ever heard it. Do you know what it's like, she said, to realize you're 72 years old and you have no one? My husband is gone. My few friends are either dead or no longer speak to me because I've pushed them away. And my son, my brilliant, kind son, looks at me with such disappointment in his eyes. My heart ached at the raw vulnerability in her words. It's not too late, Mrs. Montgomery. It's never too late to change things. Isn't it? She turned to look at me, and I saw genuine fear in her eyes. What if I've been alone for so long that I don't remember how to be anything else? Then you learn again, I said simply. And you don't have to do it alone. Let Daniel help you. Let me help you. Why would you want to help me? Victoria asked, genuine confusion in her voice. After everything I've said to you? Because you're Daniel's mother, I answered honestly. And because I've seen glimpses of the woman you are underneath all that armor. The woman who loved her husband despite his flaws. The woman who raised a son as wonderful as Daniel. That woman is still in there, Mrs. Montgomery. She's just been hiding for a very long time. Victoria stood abruptly, walking to the fireplace. She picked up a framed photo I hadn't noticed before, a much younger version of herself with a handsome man and a small boy. Daniel and his father. When Robert died 5 years ago, she said quietly, I didn't cry at his funeral. I stood there dry-eyed, accepting condolences, playing the role of the dignified widow. Do you know why? I shook my head, not trusting myself to speak. Because I'd already cried all my tears years before. When I discovered his affair, when I realized that the man I'd built my entire life around had betrayed me in the most fundamental way. By the time he died, I'd spent so long being angry at him that I'd forgotten how to feel anything else. She set the photo down, her hand trembling slightly. And then Daniel brought you home. And all I could see was history repeating itself. My worst nightmare. Watching my son fall for someone who would hurt him the way I was hurt. But I won't, I said firmly, standing to face her. Mrs. Montgomery, I swear to you on everything I hold dear. I will spend the rest of my life loving and protecting your son. He is my world. Victoria looked at me for a long moment, really looked at me, perhaps for the first time. And then, something shifted in her expression. You really mean that, she said, and it wasn't a question. With every fiber of my being, I replied. Victoria nodded slowly, and I saw her shoulders relax slightly, as if she'd been carrying a burden for so long that she'd forgotten it was there until it was finally eased. I don't know if I can change, she said honestly. I've been this way for so long. You don't have to change overnight, I assured her. Just try. That's all I'm asking. Try to get to know me. Try to be part of Daniel's life, of our life. We want you there, Mrs. Montgomery. We really do. Victoria, she said quietly. What? Call me Victoria. She managed a small, genuine smile. If we're going to do this, you should at least use my first name. I didn't tell Daniel about my visit to his mother. I wanted to wait, to see if anything would actually change. Part of me feared I'd imagined the entire conversation, that Victoria would return to her cold, dismissive self. 3 days later, on the morning of New Year's Eve, our doorbell rang. Daniel answered it, and I heard his sharp intake of breath. Mother, what are you doing here? I came into the foyer to find Victoria standing on our doorstep, looking uncertain in a way I'd never seen her before. She was holding a small gift bag. She started, then stopped, clearly uncomfortable. I wanted to bring you both a proper Christmas gift. May I come in? Daniel looked at me in confusion, but I smiled and nodded. Of course. Please. We sat in our small living room, so different from the grandeur of the Montgomery estate, and Victoria looked around with genuine curiosity. This is lovely, she said, and she sounded like she meant it. Very warm. Thank you, Daniel said, still bewildered. Mother, is everything all right? Victoria turned to me, and I saw gratitude in her eyes. Emily and I had a conversation. A real one. And I realized I've been a terrible mother-in-law. And a fairly terrible mother, too, these past years. Mother, Daniel began, but she held up a hand. Let me finish, darling. This is difficult enough. She took a breath. I let my past pain poison my present. I took my anger at your father's betrayal and directed it at innocent people. At Emily. And in doing so, I nearly lost you. Daniel's eyes were wide with shock. Victoria continued, her voice stronger now. Emily came to see me. She didn't have to, especially after how I treated her. But she did, and she made me see things I'd been refusing to acknowledge. She made me see that I was throwing away my chance at having a real relationship with my son, all because I was too afraid to trust anyone again. Victoria pulled out the gift bag, handing it to me. Inside was the first edition of Wuthering Heights I'd given her. I can't accept this, she said, because it was given with an open heart, and I rejected it with cruelty. But I'd like to give it back to you now, with a promise. A promise to try. To be better. To be the mother and mother-in-law you both deserve. I felt tears streaming down my face. Victoria. She stood, and I stood with her. And then, for the first time, Victoria Montgomery pulled me into a hug. It was awkward at first, as if she'd forgotten how, but then she held on tighter. Thank you, she whispered in my ear. Thank you for not giving up on a bitter old woman. Thank you for letting me in, I whispered back. When we pulled apart, Daniel was crying too. He embraced his mother, and I saw years of hurt and disappointment begin to heal in that moment. So, Victoria said, wiping her eyes with a dignity that made me smile, I believe there's a New Year's Eve party tonight. Might there be room for one more? Always, Daniel said, his voice thick with emotion. There's always room for family. That night, as we celebrated the New Year together, I watched Victoria laugh. Really laugh, for the first time. She was still formal, still proper, still very much herself. But there was a softness there now, a willingness to try. It wasn't perfect. There were still moments of tension, still times when old habits surfaced. But Victoria kept her promise. She tried. She joined us for dinner once a week. She asked about my work with genuine interest. She even came to the restaurant once, sitting in my section and telling me, with pride in her voice, "You're very good at this, Emily." And slowly, over time, the woman I'd glimpsed beneath the armor emerged more and more. The woman who had loved deeply and been hurt deeply. The woman who was learning, in her 70s, that it was never too late to choose love over fear. My first Christmas with my millionaire mother-in-law had been a disaster. But it had also been the beginning of something beautiful. A real family, built not on money or status or appearances, but on forgiveness, patience, and the courage to be vulnerable. As I stood between my husband and my mother-in-law, watching fireworks light up the sky, I realized that sometimes the hardest battles are the ones worth fighting. And sometimes, the coldest hearts just need someone brave enough to see the warmth still flickering inside. Victoria squeezed my hand, and I squeezed back. We had fought our way to this moment, through pain and pride and prejudice. And we had won.